Topaz Studio is a editor that you can either run standalone or you can actually run it as a plugin and it will work in Photoshop, Photoshop Elements, Lightroom. But today I'm going to show it to you completely as a standalone application. So let's jump right into it. Here is Topaz Studio. Now, one of the first unique features of Topaz Studio is that it does allow you to bring in multiple images. So I'm going to just do a big group selection of a bunch of images and click open. And you'll notice that immediately a whole bunch of JPEG files just came in. And it's not just JPEG that we allow for. Now, for the first time, Topaz Studio is allowing for RAW files as well. So I'll go ahead and click on a RAW file and we'll load that up as well. So the program allows for RAW, TIFF, PNGs, JPEG files, obviously. And the key focus of Topaz Studio is speed. And being able to edit with speed is the highest priority of the design. The image that you're looking at right now, actually, if I was to go under our new lens correction tool, you'll notice that Topaz has automatically identified that this was photographed with the 5D Mark II Canon, identifies the lens, and there's an automatic adjustment that's already being made for the lens correction. Now, I'm going to go ahead and turn that off just for a moment, but then more important is all of these incredible one-click presets. And just to show you the raw speed of the program, you're looking at a 21 megapixel file that's 16 bits per channel. And as fast as I can click on any one of these presets is as fast as those images are being updated on the screen, even though the raw number of pixels is quite a bit. Now, I am going to make just a quick collection here to the image. So let's just reset the effect that we already have. And I'm going to get really, really close. And the first thing that I notice is because this was photographed with the Canon 5D Mark II, there's a little bit, if I turn this off, okay, you're going to see that there is a little bit of the color fringing effects that are going on. And by turning that back on again, I can see the red and the blue. Okay, you can see how the computer is going to automatically adjust for that. So that's a wonderful way of getting rid of some of that, chromatic aberrations that you might have. One other thing that I want to do with this, as far as just like basic corrections go, let's throw in just the most basic correction you can start off with. I noticed that the image is a little dark, so a little exposure. Clarity is a great way to add some punch and contrast to your image. And let's boost up the saturation as well. There we go. It's looking great. And I can see that my shadows are just a little too dark, so boosting up the shadows a bit is going to give us some extra detail there. So what you're looking at right now is one of the most basic things that you can do with the Topaz Studio, just some basic photo manipulation. So now that I showed you what happens with an expensive camera like a Canon 5D Mark II, let's now go to the complete opposite end of the spectrum. This photograph was taken using an iPhone 5C. Now, I know some of you will probably remember the iPhone 5C. It's the lowest end iPhone that Apple ever made. And as beautiful as this lovely lady is, you can see that she's got a little bit of a problem with her skin. So let me show you some of the tools that we can use in Topaz Studio that are really clever in helping you with your portraits. So as you can see, I've called up just the blur tool. And if you just take the blur tool up, immediately it's going to blur the image, which isn't very attractive. But what I love is this new preserve edge feature under the blur tool, because as you bring that up, you'll notice that the computer is going to perfectly preserve the details in the image. So if you were to do a little quick before and after, in the original version, you can see how her skin has a problem, whereas now the skin has been really cleared up quite a bit. More importantly, fine textures. So as you bring up the fine textures, some of the original skin texture that she has is going to be slowly introduced back into the image until we get it just the way that we like. One thing that did happen though while we were doing this is we did soften up her hair just slightly. An exciting addition to Topaz Studio is that every one of these adjustments has a masking feature built in. So I essentially want to mask out her hair. So by using the new edge-aware brush technologies, let's make our brush a little bit bigger. All you're going to do now is just brush away her hair. And you're noticing that as I do this, I'm always keeping the red part of the brush within the interior of the area that I want to mask out. The green part is what's going to stay on the outside of your character. Essentially, this is acting very much like the popular Topaz remask, that whatever is red is going to be solid, whatever is green is going to be the outside, and between the red and the green would be equivalent to what would happen kind of like in the blue parts of Topaz Remask, where it will actually mask that out. So immediately we've been able to mask out her hair so it's not going to have that blur apply to it. And then let's just throw in a few other adjustments to make our portrait better. How about let's throw in my wonderful new focal blur, because we do want to call attention to her more than anything else. So I'm going to adjust this just so that we can get her nice in the frame. Let's make this quite a bit bigger. There we go. Okay, so essentially we're trying to create like a faux depth of field effect here, because as you know, obviously a iPhone camera does not have real depth of field. And one last thing, we don't want too much blur, just want to get it kind of subtle. Just a little bit of it is going to be perfect. So right about there should be pretty good. All right. And then one last thing to finish off the job is a vignette to try to bring more attention to her. Right before I do the vignette, I do want to actually crop this in just a little bit more, just so that we can put her on that third line. So her eyes and her expression is going to be more noticeable right along that third. Okay, I like that. You're noticing how as I see the images and the way that the image should be changed, I'm just kind of like going along with the flow. And this is what's going to really affect you. You know, this is what's going to really attract you actually to the Topaz Studio workflow. So here we are now in the vignette. Let's vignette her right here. What I love doing with the vignette tool is I like actually creating a severe extreme just so that I could see exactly the area that I'm going to be vignetting in the photo. So I'm going to put it right around her face there. And that looks great. And now I can actually open up the transition and let's do a very, very subtle vignette. Oh yeah, perfect. Okay, so right after you're done making these changes, we have now created essentially a workflow that's going to work very, very well for portraits. If I like what I just did, I can always choose to save it, and I'll call this one here Magic Portrait. How about that? Magic Portrait. I can say that this should be associated with portraits, and I'll just go ahead and click OK. So now if I look on the left-hand side under My Effects, I can see that the portrait effect that I had just created using these three adjustments has been added in. But what's even more interesting about this is that I can always copy and paste whatever adjustments I've made. So I can go over here right under our image bins down at the bottom, choose Copy Adjustment, go all the way to the other portraits that I have over here, and just choose Paste Adjustments. Okay, so now you can see the adjustments that we had just made on that photo and how beautifully they translated across into this photo here. So not only do we have the vignette functioning, let me actually toggle that on and off so you can see that the vignette is still working. Our focal blur is still there. Again, I'll turn that on and off so you can see how it's bringing attention to the lovely lady there in the foreground. And then finally the blur is what's helping smooth out her skin. So as I get a little bit closer here to her skin, I'll toggle that on and off just so you can see how just very, very lightly we're touching up her skin to make her skin look that much better. So this is really a powerful way of taking whatever adjustments you make on one photo and just with a simple copy and paste, applying it to as many photos as you like. And of course, if you wanted to make further adjustments, if I wanted to, let's say, click on my edit, I can see that relativistically it's in the same spot. So I can just make a little bit more of an adjustment over here until I get it exactly going around her face. All right. So what I'm going to do now is to slowly go further and further instead of just problem solving in our photos. We're going to go further and further into the artistic applications as well. But I did notice probably my favorite photo in this presentation, which is the skydiver. Now, as great of a shot as that is, as he's diving upside down, first, cropping is always a necessity just so that we can get our subject perfectly centered in the shot with some excitement around it, because I want to see more of him and less of the background. But of course, the bigger problem that we have after we crop is it's very, very hazy. This is where the magic of the new dehaze tool adjustment actually in Topaz comes in. You activate it, Just crank up the strength and look, just like magic, it is gone. You know, all that haze has disappeared. Now, if you crank it up too much, you might see a little bit of artifacts develop over there. You don't want to take it too far up. You can bring it down. But suppress artifacts is a great way of taking some of those extra blotchiness that the dehaze tool might do and, you know, just kind of smoothing that out. So be sure to use that suppress artifacts. It does a great job. And we'll throw in just one other adjustment to this image just to really make it pop. And that's going to be the precision contrast. Now, for those of you who are familiar with Topaz's clarity tool, you know how absolutely powerful this micro contrast adjustment can be. So let's boost that up to really make this photo pop. And as I get closer to this, oh yeah, let me give you a little before and after. That is just spectacular. Look at that. This is the way that the photo started. A lot of haze, but now we have really cleaned things up, sharp buildings, and our skydiver is doing his magic. All right. One more problem shot before we move on to some real artistic kind of things that we could do with Topaz Studio. This photograph I call Flash Did Not Reach. And what that means is this is a quick shot that the photographer is just using the flash that's on the camera. The foreground element has got too much light, while the people that are all the way in the background don't have enough light. So this is where just a simple basic adjustment can really prove to be very powerful. Before I do that, let me crop, as always. You know, I'm almost never satisfied with the way that a photo is cropped right out of the camera. So I'm always the first one to actually crop a photograph. So let's actually make this a little bit more interesting here. There we go. That looks better. Okay, done. All right. So as I take the exposure right now and bring that up, you'll notice that the entire image is being overexposed, which is not what we want. Now, what I do like is I really love what's happening to the people that are in the background, but of course the people in the foreground now look terrible. So the way we're going to fix that problem is once again with the masks that are built into each one of these adjustments. Grab that gradient tool and take a look at how magical this is. Just pivot that around. Get that gradient just the place where you like it. Okay, let me bring that around this way. All right. Take a look at what's happening now. As we bring up that exposure, okay, remember this is where the exposure was and this is where it is now. You can see that the people that are in the background are definitely getting brightened up, while the people that are in the foreground now are not being affected. So there's the before, there's the after, and that is actually pretty cool. One other problem that I have with this is that the gentleman, this is actually my father-in-law and my mother-in-law right in the front, and the flash is really blowing them out. So let's make a quick adjustment there to actually help them out, which means I could take the adjustment that I just made and let's go ahead and just add in another adjustment, basic adjustment. This time we're going to bring the exposure down. And you can see that by doing that generally, once again, that's not going to work very well. We want to work on the exposure only for their faces. So let's activate the mask again. And this is where the real power of the edge-aware brush technology is really going to come into play. As we get closer to our subject, to my father-in-law and mother-in-law, there we go. Let's grab a big brush and just brush away and watch what happens. Okay? We are currently creating a mask for his face. And not only for him, we're also doing that actually for her as well. And just to show you how great this mask looks, I'm going to bring that exposure down quite a bit. In fact, let me invert my mask like this so we really can see what's going on. And let me also make sure that the brush that I'm brushing with is going to have the mask density of white. And let's do that here for the lady as well. All right. Perfect. So you can see that immediately we have made both of their faces get that much darker. And we already know that we don't want it to be that dark. So let's take that exposure and boost it up a bit. There it is. It should be a little bit more saturated as well so we can match the color of their face tone with the rest of the people that are in the photo. As a quick before and after, let me show you what this used to look like. Let me show you the entire image here. This is where our image started. And this is where we are now. And you know what? Their faces might be just a little too dark. So let me expose it just a little more. Perfect. Okay, that's just right. I love it. And that is exactly the way that I want that photo to turn out. All right. So that has been as far as some of the error correction in photography that you could do with Topaz Studio. But now let's really explore all the great art that we can do with Studio as well. And as you can see on the left-hand side, there are categories and categories of different presets that you can immediately apply to your photos. So if I go in under, let's say, the fine art category and click on a photo, immediately, poof, that effect is going to be there. And again, just by clicking the down arrow, I can go through all these wonderful effects that I can do to that image. Now, you know what? I really like this effect over here, and I like how it's really making the photo contrasty, because as I look at the original version of the photo, I really can't see much of the clouds going on here, but now some of those clouds are really coming out. I don't like it as much going on here at the bottom, and I can see over here that this is using that amazing precision contrast tool. So let's just go ahead and reset that for a moment and bring in that precision contrast. And let's boost up those micro contrasts. And as you can see in the original, where the clouds are just a blah white or gray, now all this wonderful detail is coming out of it. But I do want to isolate that effect just to the clouds that are above our frame. So once again, let's just use a mask, a gradient. Pivot that around here like this. Let's put that up right up against that line. There we go, just like that. So you can see that now the mask that's on the right side of the frame is showing you where it's going to be affecting our image. And once I click on done, I can really manipulate that as much as I want without having to worry too much about what the rest of my image is going to be doing. One of my favorite functions in Topaz Studio is how you can take any adjustments that you make and just duplicate. So I'm going to go over here and say just duplicate this adjustment. So now you can see it really amplifies this effect, but I'm going to use this duplicate function in a clever way. We're going to take our mask and essentially invert it. Okay, so now it means that I'm only going to be affecting the areas that are below this area, or the white area of the mask. Now this time around, I don't want the rocks or the smoke over here to be as much, so I can bring that down. So it's not going to be as severe. So now you can see that because we have these two precision contrasts, if I turn on and off what I'm doing with the first contrast adjustment, that's helping me with the cloud and the smoke that's above the frame. And then the one down below is, of course, helping out with just that little bit of micro adjustment that we're doing for the smoke here below the frame. Now, finally, the lava in this photograph is, of course, what really sells this shot and the excitement and the drama in the photo. So let's use the new Hsl Color Tuning to really, really make that lava pop. As you notice, every time I put my cursor on any one of these color swatches, it shows you actually what part of the image that's isolating. So now I only want to isolate the red. I want the red to be a lot more saturated. Yeah, now take a look. Here's the before. It's kind of oranges, whereas now we are really, really punching up those reds. If you wanted to make that even a little bit brighter, by all means, let's just push it up just a little bit to make those reds really, really pop. Now, usually when I'm working with landscape shots or architecture, I always like to finish off with a little bit of sharpening. And what makes the new sharpening adjustment in Topaz Studio unique is this little function right here, lens deblur. This is a technology that's very similar to what you'll find in Topaz in Focus, and by boosting that up, even in photographs that you originally thought were perfectly in focus, suddenly you realize, oh no, it can be a lot sharper. So every time you want to create just that perfectly tack sharp photo, I highly recommend you finish your adjustments with that sharpen tool. Now keep in mind that everything in Topaz Studio works from the top to the bottom. So the image comes in, the first thing that happened was the first contrast, second contrast, the color tuning, and the sharpening. And just to highlight how important this ordering of events is, let's do some more art. How about this beautiful photo of some flowers? All right, I did find this really beautiful art preset that I was playing around with the other day. I like that one. Let's see. How about, oh, there we go. I love that one right there. Let's use that one. Okay. So immediately, this is where we were. and this is where we are now. I'm going to go ahead and throw in something as simple as grain into this photo. So I'm going to make the grain like really, really strong, just so that you can see the effects of the grain as we zoom in. And just notice that all it's doing is that it's making our image just get really grainy. Now, this is the last step that's happening in the workflow. First, there's a smudge, then the vignette, then the grain. Watch how interesting it is when I take that film grain and now slide it up to be the first step. Suddenly, the image, as it started, was a photograph that got all that grain introduced into it. And then that grain is what's causing all these beautiful swirl patterns now to appear in the background and on the flowers. So originally, when we didn't have the film grain, all we had was just a very plain, boring background. But just by introducing that film grain as the first step in our workflow, we've created that beautiful, swirly, almost like a Van Gogh painting look right there on the backdrop as well. Another great way of experimenting with Topaz Studio is just take any one of the images that you have and duplicate it. All right. So now you're going to notice that all the way at the back end of our image batches, we've got that same exact effect. Let's actually create a completely different look for our flowers, which means I'm going to reset the effect so it goes back to the original photo. And I'll just this time around click on a quick color preset. Okay, that looks pretty good. A very different color theme than what I had before. But what makes Studio so unique as an editor is not only does it give you access to all of these amazing real-time adjustments, but it does also give you access to all of the Topaz Pro plugins. So the way that the image has already been manipulated now is being sent over to Topaz Impression. So the moment that it comes into Topaz Impression, choose a preset you like. Let me go for a real severe kind of like this crayon scratch effect. There we go. I want to see a little more of the white back there. And then when you're happy with the results, that looks pretty crayon-y. You click OK, and look what's going to happen. The image goes right back into Topaz Studio. So this is a great way for you to be able to take whatever work you're already doing in Topaz Studio and just to simply hand it off to any of the other products that Topaz Labs has. All right. Further and further we go down the rabbit hole of artistic effects with Topaz Studio. Beautiful portrait. Let's see, I was playing around with this really cool art effect a couple days ago, and I think, if I remember correctly, it was this one. Yeah, glowing details is kind of neat. You know what? Let me actually use. Yeah, glowing details is pretty good. I'll use that one. Let's go back to that one. Glowing details. Like it. All right. What I like about glowing details are with how we're using the radiance in this function. Let me delete actually the bloom that's there. And as we open up the radiance controls, I could see that I want to take just this effect, which are these lines. Okay, I'm going to make them really, really saturated. In fact, let me just see the effect normal without anything else being applied. Let's fade that out. Fade that back in. Yeah, pretty good. Saturate that in. And I'm going to try to get these lines to be just right. Let me get the strength of those lines to be considerably more. There we go. Normal. Let's crank that up all the way. That's what I was going after. There we go. Now in a moment you're going to see how I'm actually going to mix this effect actually with the final image that we have. I want to get a little bit more curl out of it, and the length should be just a little bit less as well. And the saturation should definitely be higher. There we go. Nice. Got these really interesting, glowy, kind of like neon lines that are going all over her hair. But where this really comes into play is when you start playing with the blending modes. So let's choose screen, and you can see that now all these lines have been applied to her hair. In fact, by increasing the width, we're going to make those lines be even more visible, but I don't like the lines on her face. Well, thank goodness. Our masking tool is always here, comes to the rescue. Grab a nice big brush. All right, and here we go. Just brush away the things you don't want. There we are, instantly. So this is the way that the photo started. This is where we are now. Let me zoom out on it for you just so you can see how beautiful this is. Once again, there is the final effect. I love how instantly, every time I just want to see the image by itself, I can move all the other parts of the interface out of the way and just focus on the image itself. And if I want to bring back any of my tools, just a quick click and it comes right back. So now that we worked on a lovely lady, let's find something that we can really make things grungy for. How about this guy right there? All right. What a great way to finish this presentation. I'm going to do two different kinds of like grunge effects with this guy. So as I'm going through, ooh, look at that. That is pretty different than what we had before, right? Keep in mind, this is the way that that photograph is starting, and this is where we are now. Now, as much as I like that effect, let me finish off this effect with a little bit of a texture that we can throw in here. So I choose the texture module. And as a subcategory of the texture module, I can actually choose from the hundreds and hundreds of textures that are included with Topaz Studio. So as I'm going to go through here, let's find something interesting. Let's see. I want something that's pretty grungy. That looks pretty good. Yeah, let me try that one actually. Let's see. I want to find something that, oh, okay, that's even better. Let's actually use that one right there. And as always, you've got all your blend modes over here. So if I choose screen, okay, now that's going to be adding that effect to it. You can obviously choose how much of that effect you want to add to it just by changing the opacity of the effect. And I'm pretty happy with it. So again, there's the before, there's the after, and let's make one final adjustment for our photo over here. Just as easily as you duplicate the photo, at the end, let me reset that effect, and I'll find something else that's going to be pretty grungy for this guy. How about, let's see, oh, there we go. Love that one. Nice grunge effect. Now there's a lot of different things that I kind of don't like about this. Like for example, as I toggle on and off the color overlay, there's really no need for a color overlay, so I'll just go ahead and delete that. Notice how easily you can bring up a preset and just modify it to your heart's content. A dual tone? Yeah, really don't need that either, so I'll delete that out. Now I do love these textures that are being introduced. There's a texture for the perimeter. There's a texture that's actually being overlaid on the top of him. That's that real grungy kind of texture. And then finally, under the basic adjustments, I don't want it so desaturated. So let's bring back just a little bit of the color that we had in him and boost up the clarity. And last, I can see that his eye is kind of peeking through the glasses there. So let me heighten that effect by throwing in our precision contrast. Instead of applying it all the way to the end, let's drag it all the way to the top and boost up that micro contrast so I can see his eyes really, really clearly in the shot. There we go. Oh yeah. Nice textured grunge. So those were all of the images that I wanted to highlight for you guys here today. This is by far the most addicting tool that Topaz has ever made, mainly because not only of the speed, but how quickly it allows you to experiment and to throw ideas together and to just kind of refine your images until you're happy. You know what? Just as I'm looking at this image, I really, I do want to throw in one more thing, you know? Why don't we throw in a little bit of edge exposure. Edge exposure is a pretty unique tool. So for example, if I'm only looking at the left edge, as I bring that up, let me bring that up just a little bit more so the size is more. There we go. Okay, not so dark. Let's make it just a little bit lighter. All right, let's do the same thing for the right edge. So the right edge, you can make it, by the way, either brighter or darker. Let's make it darker just because we really want to kind of like center him in the shot. And let's not make it so dark. That's a lot better. There we go. So now, instead of just simply there being a circular kind of vignette, which normally would look more circular, this is now a great way of just kind of like bringing it in just from the sides. If you look at the lower right-hand corner of the interface, you're going to see that there is a Save button. And in fact, you see that that button has been placed around where all the effects are and the adjustments are. And even when you hover on it, it says Save Effect. So if you just click on Save Effect, of course, let's say, for example, I call this one Crazy Grunge. right? And after I'm done with it, I click OK, and now that's going to be added into my list of effects that I created. Now, in contrast, if you want to actually save this image, if you look here in the upper left-hand corner of the window, if I just simply click on the Save button, it's going to overwrite the image that I already had, which I don't want to do. I want to hang on to that original image, or click on Save As. It's going to allow me to choose what file format I want to use. Let's go ahead and save that as a JPEG. I'll put it out on the desktop, and we'll call this Buff Glasses Grunge. All right, and click Save. It's going to save it out now for you as a JPEG file, and so if I was to switch over to my desktop, you would see that there is the finished file right there. Now, one of the easiest things that you could do is to always, like let's say we just wanted to incorporate one image as a picture-in-picture into another, right? So let's say I want to take the image that we had of this wolf over here and this image here. So that's the image there, and I want to add in an adjustment, which we call image layer. All right, I can drag and drop my wolf photograph in there, and you'll notice that immediately it appears. Now I've got access to my edits. So it's easy just to grab that image now and move that around and rotate it or whatever else. And that's the easiest kind of compositing that you could do. But then as things get a little bit more, in depth, then that's when you're going to start doing things with the masking. So when it comes to that, let's try a quick mask with a brush. So as I come around the edges, okay, you can see that you're going to take that just little short strokes. Let me make that a little bit bigger here for you. And I'm actually seeing how what I'm doing is, yep, that was my user error. So let's go around the edges over here, and that's exactly right. Well, Heath is correct as we're doing this. In fact, as I do this, let me quickly turn the edge aware technology off and just do the interior. And at any point, you can obviously invert the mask so you can actually see what the wolf is doing in the shot. And immediately, this actually looks really, really good, So if I go back and grab my mask again and I change it to be a white mask instead of that black mask that we had, okay, we can go in and further make adjustments around the edges until we get it the way we like it. And I like it. It's looking pretty good. And when you're done, you can grab your wolf and put him anywhere you want. So let's move him over to this side right here. Oh yeah, there we go. Awesome. We'll make him even a little bit smaller. Perfect. And we're done. That was fun. Yeah, I do want to tell everyone to definitely take advantage of the special offer that Topaz has going for the month of June. Because normally, if you're looking at all of these amazing pro adjustments that I was using in Topaz Studio, they would be a total of $270, and Topaz has got an amazing offer for only $99. So definitely take advantage of the link there.